AITA for cutting off my best friend after I found out he'd been using my name to cover his lies? I'm going to start with the part that still makes my stomach tighten, because if I don't, I'll talk myself into softening it like I always do. 3 weeks ago, my phone rang at 6:12 a.m. It was my mom. She never calls me that early unless something is wrong. Her voice was sharp, like she'd been holding it in all night. "Why is your name on a loan application for your sister?" she asked. I sat straight up in bed. My brain did that thing where it tries to make the words mean something else. "What are you talking about?" "Your sister got a call yesterday," my mom said. "They said she applied for a personal loan and listed you as a co-signer. They said you've already agreed. She's crying. I'm not mad. I just need to know what is going on." I stared at the wall like it might explain it. "Mom, I didn't do that. I swear to you, I didn't sign anything." There was a pause, the kind where you can hear someone deciding whether they believe you. "Then why are they saying you did?" "I don't know," I said, and I hated how weak it sounded, like denial instead of confusion. I got off the phone and immediately called my sister Kayla. She picked up on the second ring, and I could hear she'd been crying. She said she'd tried to apply for a small loan to consolidate some credit card debt, something manageable, and the lender told her she'd already submitted an application through a different broker. That application had my full name, my phone number, and my email address listed as co-signer. They also read back my address, not my current address, my old one. The one I lived at 3 years ago. The one my best friend Evan used to crash at all the time. That's the first time my mind even touched his name. I didn't want it to. Evan and I have been friends since we were 15. We're in our early 30s now. We've done the whole life cycle together. High school, bad haircuts, first jobs, breakups, funerals, weddings. He was the guy who stood next to me when my dad's casket was lowered and I couldn't breathe. He was the guy I called when I got laid off during the pandemic and felt like I'd failed. He was the guy who slept on my couch for 6 weeks when his relationship imploded and he had nowhere to go. Evan wasn't some random friend. He was family adjacent, the kind of person your mom offers a plate to without asking. So when Kayla said my old address, I tried to keep my brain calm. There had to be another explanation. A data leak, a scammer, a mistake. But then Kayla added, "They also said you're employed at Redwood Logistics." That's my job. That's not on my social media. I don't talk about it much. Evan knows it because I've complained about dispatchers and night shifts to him 100 times. I told Kayla I'd handle it. I promised her. Then I called the lender back and asked them to email me everything they could legally send. They wouldn't send the whole application without identity verification, but they confirmed the broker's name and the email address used to submit it. The broker was a small local place, and the email address used wasn't mine. It was Evan's, not a similar one, not a typo. Straight up his first initial, last name, a number at Gmail. I'd seen it on his resume. I'd used it to send him job postings. I had it saved in my contacts. I sat on the edge of my bed with my phone in my hand and felt something crack behind my ribs. Not anger yet, something worse. That cold disbelief where your body is trying to keep you from going into free fall. I called him. He didn't answer. I texted, "Call me ASAP, it's important." No reply. I tried again, straight to voicemail. My wife Jenna came into the room and took one look at my face and said, "What happened?" I told her, and I watched her go from confused to furious in about 3 seconds. Jenna has always had a better nose for people than I do. She likes Evan, but she's never been blind about him. She said things like, "He's charming, but he avoids consequences. And I'd brush it off because Evan's always been messy, but not malicious. He was the guy who'd forget to pay his portion of dinner, not the guy who'd put my name on a loan. Jenna said, "Check your credit right now." So I did. I pulled all 3 reports. My hands were shaking enough that I kept mistyping passwords. There wasn't a new loan, but there were 2 recent soft inquiries I didn't recognize. And there was a hard inquiry from a month ago that I definitely didn't authorize. It was for a credit card I'd never heard of. It was like the floor moved under me. I wasn't just being inconvenienced. My identity wasn't just being used. My life was being touched by something I didn't agree to, something I didn't control. I called Evan again. No answer. No. And this is where the hook becomes the real question, because by the end of that day, I was sitting in my car outside his apartment building, staring at the entrance, waiting like I was about to catch someone cheating. I'm not proud of that, but I felt like if I went home without looking him in the eye, I'd explode. Evan came out around noon in gym shorts and a hoodie, coffee in his hand, looking half asleep. He saw my car, hesitated, and I swear to God, his face changed. It wasn't, "Hey man, what's up?" It was panic, like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He walked over anyway, slow, like he was hoping I'd just drive away. He leaned down to my window. "Dude, what's going on?" I said. "Get in." He laughed once, like he thought I was being dramatic. "What?" "Get in the car," I repeated, and I could hear my voice was too calm, which meant I was close to losing it. He looked around like he didn't want his neighbors to see him being confronted, then opened the passenger door and sat down. The smell of cheap cologne and old coffee filled the space. Familiar, comforting, in a way that made me want to throw up. I didn't yell. I wish I had. Maybe it would have made it simpler. I just held my phone up and showed him the email address the broker had confirmed. His eyes flicked to it and away fast. He swallowed. "Okay," he said slowly. "I can explain." That sentence right there is the moment the story stops being about a possible misunderstanding and turns into betrayal. "You used my name on a loan application for my sister," I said. His shoulders hunched like I'd punched him. "It wasn't like that." "What was it like, Evan?" He stared at the dashboard. "I was trying to help," he said. "I swear." "How does helping involve putting my name down as a co-signer without asking me?" He started talking faster, like if he filled the air with words, I'd have less room to be angry. "Kayla was stressed. She told me she was drowning. You weren't picking up that night. She was freaking out, and I know you, man. You always help your family. I figured if I started the process, you'd just..." "You figured," I repeated. My voice went thin. He nodded. "It was just the application. Nothing got finalized. That's not your decision to make." "I know," he said quickly. "I know, I messed up, but it wasn't to hurt you." I should have walked away then. I should have told him to get out of my car and never speak to me again. But the problem with loving someone like family is you automatically start looking for the version of the story where they're still who you thought they were. So I asked, "What about the hard inquiry for the credit card? Was that you too?" His eyes darted. He didn't answer. I felt heat rise up my neck. "Evan." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I was gonna fix it," he said, muffled. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. "Answer me." He dropped his hands and looked at me, and his eyes were wet. I was in a bad spot. That was his defense. Not, that wasn't me. Just, I was in a bad spot, like that magically made it less insane. "What did you do?" I asked. He blew out a breath. I applied for it. In your name. I sat there in silence. My brain literally stalled. Like it couldn't compute that someone I'd shared holidays with, someone I'd lent money to, someone I'd defended, could say that out loud. Why? I finally managed. He started crying. Actual tears. Because I couldn't get approved, he said. My credit is trashed. I have these bills. I was behind. And I thought, if I could just get a card, I could float it for a month, catch up, then I'd pay it off. I wasn't trying to ruin you. You used my identity, I said, and the words tasted like metal. He nodded, sobbing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I stared forward. Outside the windshield, the world kept moving. People walked their dogs. A delivery truck backed up with a beep, beep, beep. Normal life happening while my trust was being dismantled in real time. How much? I asked. What? How much did you spend? My voice was shaking now. How much is on it? He wiped his face. I don't know exactly. That's not an answer, he whispered. Like 3, maybe 4,000. My chest tightened so hard, I thought I might pass out. Not because of the money, not exactly. We're not rich, but we're stable. 4,000 would hurt, but we could survive it. What I couldn't survive was the thought of what else he'd done. What doors he'd opened using my name. What else might be sitting on my credit report like a landmine waiting to blow up the next time I tried to refinance or buy a car? I asked him, how long has this been going on? He looked down. A few months, I laughed. A short, ugly sound. A few months, I repeated. You've been stealing from me for months. It wasn't stealing, he said. And even as he said it, he looked like he knew how ridiculous it sounded. It's exactly stealing, I snapped. That was the first time my anger broke through. You didn't ask. You didn't tell me. You did it behind my back. You lied. He flinched. I was ashamed. Oh, okay, I said, sarcastic, bitter. That makes it fine. He reached for my arm, like he always did when he wanted to calm me down. I pulled away so fast I hit the door. Don't touch me, I said. He froze, hands up. I'm sorry. I sat there with tears in my own eyes, and I hated myself for it. I hated that even then, even with the evidence, I was still grieving the friendship more than I was furious about the fraud. Because that's what it was, fraud, a crime. And here's where the escalation starts, because it didn't stop with that confession. That confession was just the first crack in a dam. I told him, you need to give me everything, all the details, every account, every application, every time you've used my info. He nodded like a kid being scolded. Okay, I will. Today, I said. He promised he would. He begged me not to tell Jenna yet. He said he wanted to explain to me first, like he deserved a chance to frame it. I told him Jenna already knew. His face collapsed. He whispered, please don't call the cops. And that sentence, that's when the moral weight hit me. Because I'm not some tough guy. I've never been in a fight. I pay my bills. I follow rules. Calling the police on my best friend felt like dropping a nuke on my own past. But also, not calling the police felt like letting someone who betrayed me walk away with it. I drove him back to his building in silence. He got out, and before he closed the door, he said, I'll fix it, I promise. I didn't answer. When I got home, Jenna was pacing. She asked, did he do it? I nodded. Her eyes filled with anger. We're calling the credit bureaus. We're freezing your credit. Today. So we did. We froze everything. We filed disputes on the hard inquiry. We changed passwords. We added fraud alerts. Jenna pulled up a checklist like she'd been waiting her whole life to go to war with a scammer. Meanwhile, my phone stayed quiet. Evan didn't send details. He didn't call. He didn't text. At 7 p.m., I texted him, "I need the account info now." He replied 10 minutes later, "I'm at work. I'll send it tonight." Midnight came. Nothing. At 1:30 a.m., Jenna said, "He's stalling." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't, because I could feel it. That familiar Evan pattern. The way he'd avoid until the problem either went away or someone else fixed it. The way he'd apologize and then disappear until you were too exhausted to stay mad. But this wasn't forgetting to return a borrowed tool. This was my name, my credit, my family. The next morning, I called him again. He didn't answer. I drove to work with a knot in my throat. I couldn't focus. Every email felt like it was in another language. All I could think was, what else is out there? What else did he do? And then, like the universe wanted to make sure I didn't keep pretending, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered. "Hi, is this Daniel?" a woman asked. "Yes. This is Marissa from Westfield Property Management. I'm calling about your rental application." My blood ran cold. "My what?" She sounded cheerful, professional. "We received your application for the unit on Maple Street. We just need to verify employment and income. We have your employer listed as Redwood Logistics." I couldn't speak for a second. Then I said, "I didn't apply for anything." There was a pause. "Oh, are you sure?" "I'm absolutely sure. We have your name, date of birth, social security number." She trailed off, suddenly cautious. "If this is fraud, you may want to contact—" "I know," I cut in, and my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "Can you tell me what email was used?" She gave it to me. Evans. I hung up and sat in my car in the parking lot at work, shaking. A rental application meant he'd been trying to move, or trying to show something, or trying to get approved for something using my income. It meant he wasn't just doing one desperate thing. He was building a whole fake life out of my identity. That was the moment the conflict stopped being between me and Evan and became something that infected everything. My marriage, my relationship with my family, my ability to trust my own reality. I called Evan immediately. Voicemail, I texted, "Rental application in my name. Call me now." No response. I called again. Nothing. At lunch, I drove to his job. Evan works at a car dealership, not sales, more like service coordination. I walked in with my heart pounding and asked for him. The receptionist looked uncomfortable and said he wasn't in. I said, "Is he on shift today?" "I'll pay it back," he said. "I swear, I'll take out a loan in my name." "You can't," I snapped. "That's the whole point," he flinched. "I'll sell my car. I'll borrow from my mom. I'll do anything." I turned around and looked at him. This is the moment I'm ashamed of, because what came out of my mouth wasn't controlled or mature. It was raw. I said, "You didn't just steal money. You stole peace. You stole trust. You made me question my own life." He started sobbing again. I know. Please don't ruin me." And there it was again. Not, "Please let me make it right." Not, "I accept whatever happens." It was, "Please don't ruin me," like I was the threat, like the consequences were something I was choosing to inflict. I said, "You ruined you." He shook his head violently. "I made mistakes. I'm not a monster." I stared at him and said, "Monsters don't think they're monsters." That sounds dramatic, but it was the only way I could explain the disconnect between his tears and his actions. Because he looked genuinely devastated, and yet he'd done it anyway. multiple times, over months, with planning, with access, with deception. The major conflict didn't explode in a single moment. It exploded in slow, ugly waves after that meeting. That night, Jenna and I argued for 2 hours. Not about whether Evan was wrong. We both agreed he was wrong. But about what I was going to do next. Jenna wanted me to file the police report immediately. She wanted clean lines. She wanted protection. I kept saying, if I report him, he'll go to jail. She said, if you don't, you might be stuck paying his debt forever. I said, I can make him pay it. She looked at me like I was naive. How? With what money? He couldn't pay his own bills. That's why he did this. I said, he'll figure it out. She said, he's already figured it out. He figures it out by using you. That was another turning point. Hearing my wife say it so plainly, hearing the truth I'd been dancing around. And then Jenna said something that hit deeper than the fraud itself. She said, I need to know you'll protect us, not him. Because that's what it came down to. I wasn't just deciding what to do about Evan. I was deciding what kind of husband I was. Whether my loyalty to an old friend would outweigh my duty to my home. The fallout spread. My mom stopped texting Evan. Kayla blocked him. Mutual friends started asking questions because Evan had told a few people I was mad at him for no reason. That part came out through my friend Marcus, who called me and said, "What's going on? Evan says you're freaking out and he doesn't know why." I could hear the doubt in Marcus's voice, like maybe I was being dramatic. So I told Marcus the truth. There was a long silence. Then Marcus exhaled and said, "Man, what the hell?" Then he said, "He asked me for your address last month." I felt my stomach drop. "He said he was mailing you something," Marcus continued. "I didn't think anything of it. I didn't give it. But still, dude." That was when I realized Evan wasn't just opportunistic. He was actively gathering information, testing angles, seeing who would hand him pieces. He'd been using my name like a tool, and he'd been using our mutual trust like a weapon. A week after the first call from my mom, Jenna and I sat down and did the thing I'd been dreading. We went to the police station. I walked in with a folder of evidence and felt like my skin didn't fit. I kept thinking, I'm really doing this. I'm really about to put my best friend into the system. The officer who took my report was kind but detached, like he'd heard versions of this story 100 times. He asked for details, dates, amounts, proof. When I handed him the printed email address and the inquiry reports, he nodded like it was straightforward. It was anything but straightforward to me. It felt like swallowing glass. When he asked, "Do you know the person who did this?" I said, "Yes," and my voice cracked. I hated myself in that moment. Not because Evan didn't deserve consequences, but because I felt like I was betraying him, even though he'd already betrayed me. After we filed the report, Jenna squeezed my hand in the parking lot and said, "You did the right thing." I nodded, but I didn't feel relief. I felt hollow. Evan found out the next day. He called me screaming, not crying, not apologizing, screaming. "You called the cops on me?" he yelled. I held the phone away from my ear. Jenna stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. I said, "You left me no choice." "You said you'd give me time," he shouted. "I gave you time," I said, voice shaking. "You didn't send me anything. You kept lying. You kept doing it." He sounded like he was hyperventilating. "I was trying to fix it." "You were trying to save yourself," I said. He went silent for a beat. Then his voice turned sharp. "You're acting like I'm some criminal. She glanced at the computer. He called out. I stood there, feeling like a fool, like everyone could see the desperation on my face. I went back to my car and sat there gripping my phone, trying to decide what kind of person I was going to be. The person who protects his friend, or the person who protects his family. When I got home that night, Jenna had a folder on the kitchen table. She'd printed everything: credit reports, inquiry details, notes from phone calls. She looked up at me and said, very calmly, "We need to file a police report." I said, "If we do that, his life is over." She didn't flinch. He made that choice when he put your social security number on an application. I opened my mouth, and nothing came out. Because she was right, and that's what made it hurt. My mom called again that night, asking if everything was okay. Kayla was still scared. She kept apologizing for even mentioning her debt to Evan, like it was her fault. I told my mom we were handling it, but I could hear the worry underneath her questions. After the call, Jenna said, "You need to tell your family the truth." I didn't want to. I didn't want my mom to look at Evan like he was a stranger. I didn't want Kayla to feel guilty. I didn't want to be the guy who brought police and fraud and shame into our circle. But the truth was already there. It was just hiding behind silence. So I told them. I called my mom and said, it was Evan. My mom didn't speak for a long time. When she finally did, her voice sounded older. She said, "No, not Evan." "Yes," I said. She whispered, "He was in our home." I know. That was the first emotional turning point, and it wasn't even about me. It was about watching my mom lose her sense of safety retroactively. Watching her realize that someone she fed and hugged might have been stealing from her son. The next few days were a blur of calls. Fraud departments, credit bureaus, property management, the broker, everyone telling me the same thing in different polite language. File a report, document everything, protect yourself. And Evan stayed mostly silent. He sent one text. "Please don't do anything yet, I can fix it," I replied. "Then send me everything, tonight, no more delays." He didn't. On day 4, he finally called. His voice was small. "Can we meet?" I said. "You can tell me everything over the phone." "No," he said quickly. "Please, I need to see you." I agreed to meet in a parking lot behind a grocery store, which feels stupid now, like we were doing a drug deal. But I think part of me wanted it to feel secret, like if we handled it quietly, it wouldn't become real. He showed up looking like he hadn't slept. His eyes were red. He got into my car again, like we were reenacting the first confrontation. He started crying immediately. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know I'm trash." I didn't say anything. I just waited. He took out his phone and started scrolling. Okay, I'll tell you." And then he told me more. The credit card was real. It was about $4,800 now, not $3,000 or $4,000. He'd been making minimum payments sometimes, skipping others. The rental application was because he was trying to move in with a new girlfriend who didn't know his credit was wrecked. He'd used my name as the applicant, so they'd approve the lease. He said he never intended to actually sign. I said, "You already did sign. You signed the application." He shook his head. "Not the lease. That's not the point." Then he admitted something else. He'd applied for a small personal loan in my name 2 months ago, got denied, and forgot about it. That was likely one of the inquiries. He said, "I didn't think it would go anywhere." I stared at him. "So your plan was just to keep trying until something did go somewhere?" He didn't answer. And then, like a final twist of the knife, he said, I used your name because you're the only person who's always had it together. That line made me feel sick, not because it was flattering, but because it revealed how he saw me. I wasn't his friend. I was his safety net, his mask, his excuse. I asked him, "How did you get my social security number?" He hesitated. I said, "Evan." He whispered, "Your tax form." I blinked. "What?" "When I stayed at your place," he said, voice trembling. "You had that folder on the desk. I took a picture." I felt something in me go cold. I remembered that folder. It had been there because I'd been doing taxes and I'd left it out. Evan had been sleeping on my couch, eating my food, telling me he'd do anything to get back on his feet. And he was taking pictures of my paperwork. I got out of the car because I suddenly felt like I couldn't breathe in that small space with him. I walked a few steps away, hands on my head, staring at the asphalt. My chest hurt. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rewind time. Evan followed me, staying a few feet back like he was afraid I'd hit him. I almost laughed at the absurdity. "Evan," I said slowly, "you committed identity fraud." He snapped, "I didn't hurt you." That sentence made me see red. "You didn't hurt me?" I repeated. "My sister is crying. My mom thinks I'm ruining my own family's finances. My wife is scared we're going to get dragged into debt. I've spent days on the phone trying to stop things you set in motion." "What do you call that?" He started sobbing again. "I needed help." "You should have asked," I said. "I would have helped you." He choked out. "You always say that." "I mean it," I said, and my voice broke. "You were my brother. I would have done anything, and you still chose this." There was this long, ugly silence where all I could hear was his breathing and my own heartbeat. Then he said, very quietly, "You're dead to me." And I know how that sounds, like a melodramatic line from a movie. But the way he said it was cold, final, like he wanted to hurt me back because he couldn't undo what he'd done. I didn't respond. I just hung up. For the next week, I got messages from unknown numbers. Some were Evan. Some were people I didn't recognize, saying things like, "Why are you doing this to him?" And "He made a mistake, man." One person called me a snitch. Another said, "You're really going to ruin his life over money?" Over money. That phrase made me want to shake people. Like the only thing at stake was a number. Like trust was disposable. I found out later Evan had been telling a version of the story where I'd loaned him money and then changed my mind and overreacted. He left out the identity theft part, or he downplayed it like it was just a paperwork mistake. The social consequences were strange. Most friends believed me when I told them the truth, but a couple didn't want to get involved. They did that thing where they act neutral, like both sides are equally valid, like betrayal is a misunderstanding. One of our mutual friends, Lisa, called and said, "Evan is really struggling. Are you sure there's no way you can handle it privately?" I said, "If someone broke into your house, would you handle it privately?" She sighed. "That's not the same." "It is," I said. "He broke into my life." After that, I stopped taking calls about it. I didn't want to convince people. I didn't want to plead my case like a politician. Anyone who heard identity fraud and still thought I was the villain wasn't someone I could trust either. The aftermath has been quieter, but not peaceful. On paper, we did everything right. The police report helped with disputes. The credit bureaus flagged the inquiries. The credit card company opened an investigation. My accounts are locked down now in a way that makes every little financial move feel like walking through airport security. But emotionally, it's like I'm living with an alarm system in my chest. I double-check my locks more. I watch my mail like a hawk. I get anxious when I see unknown numbers. I flinch when I hear someone say Evan's name, like it's a curse. Jenna has been supportive, but I can tell she's still angry. Not just at Evan, at me, a little. Not because I caused it, but because she watched me hesitate. She watched me try to save him. I think it scared her how much loyalty I had for someone who could hurt us. My mom doesn't talk about Evan much now. When she does, it's like she's talking about someone who died. She'll say, "Remember when Evan helped your dad with the porch steps?" And then her voice goes tight, and she stops. Kayla has been carrying guilt, even though she shouldn't. She keeps saying, "If I hadn't told him about my debt," and I keep telling her, "This is not on you," because it isn't. If it wasn't Kayla, it would have been something else. Evan didn't do it because of her. He did it because he decided he was entitled to use people. The part that messes with me most is that Evan didn't look like a villain when he confessed. He looked like my friend. He looked scared and broken and ashamed. He cried. He begged. He said all the right words. And yet, he still did it. Again and again. Even after the first time. Even after he knew it could destroy me. So I keep going back and forth in my head. Was this desperation? Addiction? Some kind of spiral? Or was it simply character? Was he always like this and I just didn't want to see it? There's a memory that keeps replaying. It's from about a year ago. Evan and I were sitting on my back porch drinking beers. He was talking about how unfair life was, how he always got the short end, how other people had it easier. I remember he said, half joking, "You're lucky, man. You're the kind of guy who could get away with anything because people trust you." At the time, I laughed. I thought it was just envy. Now, it sounds like a blueprint. Last week, I got a message from Evan's mom. She's always been kind to me. She used to call me her second son. Her text was long. She said Evan had told her what happened. She said she was ashamed. She said she didn't raise him to be this way. She asked if there was any way we could resolve it without destroying his future. I stared at the message for a long time. My throat felt tight, because part of me wanted to respond with compassion. Part of me wanted to say, I don't want to destroy him. Part of me still wanted to protect the kid I grew up with, the guy who held me up at my dad's funeral. But then I thought about Jenna's face when she said, "I need to know you'll protect us." I thought about Kayla crying. I thought about my mom's voice going quiet when she realized someone she trusted had been taking pictures of our family's paperwork. And I didn't respond. Because I don't know what compassion looks like when someone uses your identity like it's theirs. I don't know what forgiveness means when the betrayal required planning. I don't know how you set boundaries with someone who crossed them so completely that the relationship itself becomes unsafe. Evan hasn't tried to apologize again since that phone call where he said I was dead to him. I hear through mutual friends that he's telling people I turned on him, that I ruined everything, that I chose money over friendship. Sometimes, late at night, I lie awake and wonder if I could have done something different, if I'd confronted him sooner, if I'd helped him more over the years, if I'd been less judgmental, if I'd been more present, if I'd noticed signs. But then I remember the truth that keeps cutting through my excuses like a blade. I didn't make him do it. I didn't hand him my identity. He took it. He took it while eating my food and calling me his brother. And even now, even with all of this, I feel guilty. That's the part that makes me question myself. Because if someone else did this to me, a stranger, I'd feel clear, I'd feel righteous. But because it was Evan, because I loved him, because our lives are tangled with years of memories, I feel like I'm grieving and punishing at the same time. Jenna says guilt is normal when you finally stop enabling someone. She says my brain is confused because it's used to protecting Evan from consequences. She's probably right. Still, there are moments where I miss him, and I hate that. I hate missing someone who could do this. I hate that I can remember him laughing on my couch and also remember him whispering, "Your tax form," like it was nothing. So now I'm sitting in this moral tension. I reported him. I froze my credit. I warned my family. I cut him off. I did what I had to do, but I keep asking myself if I'm the villain in his story, if I crossed a line by involving the police, if there was some other path where I could have protected myself and still saved him. And I can't tell if that question is empathy or leftover denial. So, am I the asshole?